Join me today as we take a look at how I paint Asian elephants for our wargaming needs. This tutorial has been designed in a way in which we can have our elephants painted within a very short amount of time, just using the good old dry brushing method. This video is part 1 of a 2-part series. The second part will include the history behind this piece, how I painted the rest of the diorama, as well as how it was based. Oh, and how could I forget? Part 2 will also include a giveaway, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. Today we are going to be painting ourselves a cheeky little Asian elephant. Now I say little, but this elephant is huge. In fact, Asian elephants are the biggest animals on the Asian continent, so you can expect to paint quite a big model. Now there is a big difference between an African elephant and an Asian elephant, but in short, an Asian elephant has shorter ears and they actually don't protrude out. Asian elephants are slightly smaller. Their heads bobble a bit more than an African elephant, and their skin tone is slightly different due to the climate in which they reside. Now, elephants aren't just left in the wild, unfortunately. A lot of militaries around the world throughout different periods of history have used elephants to tow different vehicles or artillery pieces, to put men on them, to use them as a tool in which to fight the enemy, and all around just a very useful asset for different militaries, as barbaric as it is. So today we're going to look at how we can paint them for our wargaming purposes. So the model I am using is this World War II elephant with elephant rider, as well as a British RAF mechanic. Now the link to this model is in my description, and I will talk in a lot more detail about it in part 2. It paints up well in terms of the cleaning of the actual elephant. It's pretty easy. There's just the seam that goes right along the spine and the top of the head, which was a bit of a pain to clean, and the file that I was using has actually left marks of the file, so probably try and get yourself a much finer file if you're going to clean it up this way. Now to base coat our elephant, I give it a base coat of Basil Grey from Vallejo. Ensure that you've given your elephant a good wash prior. I didn't prime the elephant this time round, I just went straight with a really thick coat of this Basil Grey, purely because I'm going to be dry brushing the absolute crap out of this, so I just didn't think there's going to be a use for the primer. Now once that's done, I want to focus on his toes. I paint them with deck tan, and they're just tiny little stubs that come out, or his toenails I should say. So just giving them a little dot of deck tan on the outer edges there that you'll see. Your wash will hide some of that detail anyway, and they're going to be weathered, so it really isn't a huge problem if you don't paint the entire nail in this colour. With that done, I opted to wash this model with no oil, which is a black wash. You could also go a dark brown wash if you wanted to as well, but I just found that black has been my go-to wash for some time now. You can tell that these initial colours would work really great for an African elephant as well. And then once your model is coated with all of that wash, we can go over it with Basil Grey again using a dry brush. Now the method that I'm going to be using in this video is mainly the dry brushing method. There's not going to be too much painting involved, so you can literally get this elephant painted within 10 minutes, excluding the wash time for it to dry. It was a super quick method of getting the elephant to pop. So if you've got a big force of elephants, perhaps you're playing as the Carthaginians and you need some war elephants painted, then this sort of method is going to be one for you. Now to really make the grey pop, I'm going to give it a dry brush of light grey. Now you can see that I'm not going as crazy as I was in the previous shot with the dry brushing. I'm just trying to go along the outer edges and really start to capture some of the detail that stick out. This model is actually fantastic for the amount of detail that's in it. So it makes the dry brushing process very, very easy. And just by subtle bits of dry brushing, you'll start to really make this elephant pop. And in all honesty, minus weathering, you've probably got an African elephant ready to go. But because we're painting an Asian elephant, I'm going to give it a dry brush of old wood. Now this old wood is going to simulate dried mud. And the dried mud is going to be coated on this elephant because they like to roll and jump into or walk into like lakes and stuff to cool down in the Asian heat. So I'm giving it a dry brush of this old wood to simulate that dried mud. You can go as little or as hard as you want, but I've noticed that Asian elephants are quite orange because of the way that they live and the way that they bath. So you probably want to go quite heavy with this paint. Now with that, we can start painting the more orange tone that we're going to need. So for that I use flat earth, and now I'm just really picking out bits that protrude out a little bit more. So you can see there's lots of little folds, and there's also some big folds there, especially the little folds on the trunk, the very front of the trunk, not behind as much. You're not really going to see that. I'm just going to keep working it in until I'm happy with it. If you want to make it really dirty, you can do. I know there is some features on these elephants that stick out a bit more, like dots and stuff, which you could paint on, especially around the ears. But for the purpose of this video, I've avoided that. I'm just trying to make this a super quick, dry brushing sort of video. Now with that, I decided that I probably went just a touch too hard with the flat earth. So I'm just going back over it with old wood, just to tone down some of that orange a bit more, and just to make him look really dirty and like he's just come out of the jungles of India or Burma, wherever he's being used. There's the very fine bits of extra details here that I'm dry brushing on. Now this next step is completely optional, and I know the brown filter I'm using is out of production now. It's from AK Interactive. It's just a brown glaze, so you can actually make them yourselves by just watering down the paint, or thinning it down a lot, so it just gives it a hint or a tint of the color that you want to use. So if you can find a brown glaze that's already pre-made for you, fantastic, but you can make your own brown glaze as well, really simply. It's just, if you Google it, you'll work it out really easily. Now for the tail, I paint this in black grey, or highlight it in black grey. I believe I had already painted it at this point. I was just going over with a highlight, but it's black grey, wash, black grey, and you're done. It's really simple, guys. You can make these painting animals really straightforward, and they can really pop on the table with very little effort. Then finally for the feet, I just give a dot of ivory on each of the nail. If you had tusks, you could paint them as well. I know some people add a bit of like a bony cream to it, which would also look very good, like an aged bone, but it's up to you. And then finally, I go over with Knorr oil as a pin wash in areas that I feel like the wash has either been removed because of my dry brushing, or perhaps the wash didn't capture it as dark as I would have liked to. So I'm painting behind the ears, I'm using this pin wash behind the ears, and I'm also just adding in little bits just around the outer edges and little details that my eye is drawn to, that I feel like needs this crucial little pin wash. You can leave it, there's absolutely no need to do this. I just feel like it adds just a little bit better shade or shadow effect around the ears and anywhere else that you feel like it needs, the eyes, etc. Now, part 2 is going to include a bit more of a history breakdown as to why I'm painting this diorama, if you will. It will also include how I've painted the figures, and it will also touch on how I've based the model. So stay tuned for part 2. That'll probably be coming out either next week or the following week, and it will really round out this series nicely. Now, the model itself and the elephant specifically is fantastic. I think the dry brushing method has really helped. Took little time. That means I could spend a lot more time on painting the figures and the actual basing of the model. So if you've enjoyed this video, fantastic. Be sure to let me know below. Huge thank you goes out to my Patreons. You guys continue to grow and continue to support the channel, which is just amazing. And I really do thank all of you, as well as my YouTube channel members and those that are just supporting me in general. It really does mean an absolute bunch to me, and I'm just over the moon, as I've said. So that'll end it today, guys. Remember to keep an eye out for part 2. There's going to be a lot more history involved, and I'll give the full breakdown as to the rest of the painting of the model. Other than that, I'm going to leave it here, and I will catch you at the next one.